right, other than that.
Good morning.
Morning.
Happy first day of spring.
Oh,
Yes. It's finally arrived. My name is Shannon White, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for KICA. It is my pleasure to welcome you to KICA's annual membership meeting. Today's meeting is being attended by our members in person as well as via Zoom. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule today to be with us. I now have the pleasure of introducing you to your KICA Board of Directors. Directors, when I name your name, if you'd be so kind as to wave your hand to say hello this morning. Our Chair, Kevin Donlin. Vice Chair, Dwight Williams. Treasurer, Lisa Mascolo. Secretary, Paul Hennessy. Director, David DeStefano. You brought your own audience. Director, Sherry Gallagher. Sherry, too. Developer Director, Amanda Mole. Two of our board members, David and Amanda, will be completing their service with KICA this morning. Based upon the recent covenant amendment vote, our Developer Director, Amanda Mole, will be completing her service on April 15th when the covenant amendment takes effect. I'd also like to take a moment to welcome our directors-elect. If you would please stand to be recognized and turn towards the room, Phil Walpole and Tim Hazel. We look forward to working with both of you. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to the Chair, Kevin Donlin, to call the meeting to order.
Okay, we'll now call the meeting to order. We'll start with the appointment of our parliamentarian. Our parliamentarian today is Tim Muller with the law firm of Rosen Haygood. His firm provides legal advice to the staff and board on a variety of issues. First order of business will be approval of the minutes from March 21st, 2024. The minutes that we're using were posted as a verbatim transcript of last year's meeting. These are the community's minutes, so the motion second are votes of all members present. So do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on these minutes, corrections, et cetera? All in favor of these minutes? And this is a vote by the community, not just the board. All in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstains? Thank you. Next, I'll turn it back over to Shannon for certification of the quorum and our voting.
Thank you. In order to hold the meeting today, we needed a 51% quorum by proxy. This year, proxies were assigned representing 65.9% of our total votes. Proxies are for attendance only and cannot be used to vote on any other matter today. Voting ended at 12 p.m. on Thursday, February the 13th. We had 67.8% of total votes cast in the director election. Votes were cast electronically, by mail, and by phone. The election was certified by our third-party voting service, votenow.com. Our two new directors, Tim Hazel and Phil Walpole, have been elected to fill 3-year terms and will be taking their seats on the board at the conclusion of this meeting. As part of this year's vote, we also included 5 amendments for your consideration. We needed both a 60% quorum and 75% in favor of the non-abstaining votes. We achieved a 65.9% quorum. As previously reported to the membership, 4 of the 5 amendments reached the required 75% in favor. The amendments have been signed and were recorded by our legal counsel yesterday. As many of you know, achieving quorum is often difficult for us. We finally achieved the covenant amendment quorum on the Tuesday evening, just 2 days prior to the close of the vote. Gotta tell y'all, that's a real nail biter for those of us on the staff and the board wondering whether we will meet the required quorum. Aside from the many reminders that we send to you, we also offer a $500 award to one participating member. The name was randomly selected by our third-party voting service, and I'm pleased to share with you that this year's winners are Patrick and Linda Karen, owners of 802 Osprey Cottage Lane. I believe he told Ellen, I never win anything. So thank you to everyone who participated in the vote. One other business item is related to the number required for a petition of the membership to compel a referendum on a specific board action. The board aligned this number with our voting numbers from the most recent vote. For our members present, the required petition number would be similar to the voting process you are already familiar with. For record, the total number of base votes from this year's vote was 9,715. This number will be in effect until a new date of record is pulled. Now I'd like to turn the meeting back over to Kevin for his chair report.
So I have just a couple comments to update people on what KICA's accomplished and things we've done over the past year. First, I want to start with some thank yous. First, thank you to everyone who came here today to listen and contribute. Next, I want to thank Shannon and our entire KICA staff for their ongoing efforts to make Kiwa a better place for all of us to enjoy. I continue to be impressed by the dedication of our KICA team members. Lastly, I want to thank all the current directors for their public service over the past year. While we were not always in full agreement, all the directors showed professionalism and collegiality, which helped us focus on progress for KICA. In terms of just a few accomplishments, as a supplement to Shannon's upcoming report, I'll highlight several things that KICA did over the past year. While much of this takes place behind the scenes, a great deal of work was done by the board and especially volunteers on our committees. The ARB task force completed its third report regarding the transition and implementation of architectural control to KICA. The board has now begun negotiating this transition with Kiwa partners. The governance task force developed a series of amendments to the general covenants, and members have passed 4 new amendments, including conversion of the seat permanently held by Kiwa partners to a seat elected by the community. The Finance Committee completed a full update to all our financial controls, and KICA participated in a tri-party suit to pursue a clean transfer of Captain Sam Spit to KICA. So there was actually quite a bit going on behind the scenes that maybe some people are aware of. Last thing I'll say is we continue to have 6 priorities, many are carryovers from last year, that the board intends to focus on in this upcoming year. First, the conveyance of Captain Sam Spit to KICA and permanent conservation of that land. Second, development and implementation of a comprehensive front gate security and enforcement plan. 3, exploring opportunities for additional member amenities. 4, transition of architectural authority for the island to KICA. 5, evaluation of the entire general covenants and the opportunity to fully update that document. And 6, continuation of efforts to increase the coordination between KICA, the town, Kiwa partners, the resort, and the Conservancy. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lisa to talk about our finances.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Let's see. There we go. Oh, I missed one. First, my thanks to the entire Finance Committee. It's been a great pleasure serving with the Finance Committee. Everybody who's on the Finance Committee, I think, did a great job and was really focused on the stewardship responsibility of being members of the Finance Committee. Paul Huff, Michael Petreka, and Bram Petronovic are all transitioning off the Finance Committee. Those of you who were at the last full meeting of the board understood that I made a recommendation to the new board that they consider extending the term of some or all of those if they're willing to serve. It's been a great Finance Committee, and it was really a pleasure to serve with them. And my thanks to Dale and the team. Dale's got a great team, and overall, I would say that our financial condition is very strong, and that's certainly due to the work that the Finance Committee did, but it's really due to the work that Dale and his entire Finance Department have done, so my thanks to them. We did get a fair number of things accomplished over the course of 2024. We updated the reserve fund policy, and I would make a comment about policy update in general. These are all living documents, and our objective, whether it's on a Finance Committee or a Governance Committee, ought to be to continually review these and make sure that our policies are consistent with conditions that the association faces. So the reserve policy was updated last July. From an investment standpoint, The members' money is invested for the most part with Morgan Stanley Cook Street. That's a really good and strong relationship, and I think the results that Dale and the team have with Morgan Stanley Cook Street sort of speak for themselves, and I'll talk about that a little bit. You can see on the slide how we've moved from 2022 to 2024, where we're actually generating almost $1.5 million in investment. We created 3 buckets for our investments, and you can think of those as sort of immediate term, short term, and long term, with the operating, the designated, and the reserve funds. For each of those, we put in place new investment policy statements. And again, I'd make the point that the objective in this case of the Finance Committee is to make sure that we're pretty consistently looking at the policies, making sure they reflect changing conditions. When I think about the overall budget process, I thought the 2025 budget process was effective. We had some conversation about the timing with respect to putting forward budget. Dale and the finance team are constantly looking at current conditions, and I think when we put forward budget recommendation for 2025, the timing, in my view, was good. You can take a look there at where we are from an operating and a reserve fund standpoint. The board approved the 2025 budget with the deficit. One of the things that we talked about with respect to budget philosophy is we want to get as close to a balanced budget as possible. And we also want to make sure that we are providing predictable assessment increases over time. We don't want to have one year no increase and the next year a 20% increase. So I think we put that philosophy into action this year. Insurance, as you all know, being homeowners on the island, is a really complicated topic. I think our collaboration with USI is also very strong. They are a broker for our insurance policies. The insurance year, for people who don't know, runs from May through April. That makes it a little bit complicated because our budget year is obviously the calendar. But again, I think the Finance Committee and Dale and team did a great job, and we actually underspent our budget. Very importantly, and you heard that if you were at the last board meeting, we have a completely clean, independent audit opinion. Again, that's Dale and the team being very focused, not just at the end of the year, but throughout the year, coordinating with Forvis to make sure that Forvis has all the documentation that they need and that any questions that arise over the course of the year get answered so there's no surprises at the end of the year. This was our first year of self-insurance around the employee health benefits program, and I also think that was pretty successful. It gave us access to additional information, and the new Finance Committee will evaluate where we are with respect to that program. Collections are really obviously important. You may know that our overall assessment collections are in the neighborhood of $15.5 million. I think at this point we're almost fully collected, maybe 95 or 96%, whereas this point last year I think we're at 92. But a really strong effort to consistently collect. We always, again, on this sort of constant improvement and being even better, thinking about member communication. On some days, we get people who say, well, geez, you should publish every single number, and on other days, people say, we'd really like a summary. So we're constantly focused on what's the right way and the best way to communicate. And the effective use of subcommittees as part of the Finance Committee was also really important. We looked at the reserve fund and updated the policy. We updated the policy statements with respect to the operating cash fund, and we created the designated cash fund. We had an insurance subcommittee. The joint member fee was a matter that was raised at the end of '23, and we had a subcommittee that talked about that and worked with some of our members who are joint tenants. And I think the conclusion we came to, while it may not have been exactly what the joint members who brought it up wanted, I think it was we ended in a good place. And as Kevin mentioned, we updated the financial controls manual. Yeah, as I noted at the beginning, our financial condition is strong. I don't need to read through all of those things. I do think that the new treasurer and the new Finance Committee has work to do to make sure that our liability and property insurance positions continue to be strong. It's a complicated market. You may know that we put in place a named storm policy about a year and a half ago, and we've certainly used that. So that was a good thing that we accomplished. From a priority standpoint, this is what the Finance Committee talked about at the last Finance Committee meeting. Obviously, the new treasurer and the Finance Committee will decide in conjunction with the board what the priorities are for the Finance Committee. And I guess, I'm not sure I'd call anything else out on there. Just FYI, here's what would be a preliminary look. This is the same basic schedule that's followed every year with respect to what things that the Finance Committee is focused on get done when. And that is the Finance Committee and Treasurer's Report.
Thank you. We'll turn it back to Shannon for the COO report.
Good morning again. So we are an association of 9,541 members. And we welcome 343 new members to the association in 2024. Our members are from a wide variety of locations, including 49 of the 50 U.S. states and 10 countries beyond the United States. As someone is going to ask me, there you go. Thank you very much. North Dakota is the only state not represented. So if any of you have friends in North Dakota, be sure to tell them how great Kiowa is, particularly in the winter. As an association, KICA strives to meet the needs of our large membership. Our charge is to work to preserve and enhance both the quality of life and the property values for our membership. We are also committed to preserving the uniqueness of this community and being stewards of its many resources. An obvious way to meet these obligations is through the care of the physical property, the properties held in common by all of you. In 2024, we completed numerous infrastructure projects to include $1 million in drainage projects, including repairing drainage lines on the Parkway between Spartina and Sawgrass and in the Retz Bluff neighborhood. We also added tide flex gates in Retz Bluff, Erie Hall, Burroughs Hall, to lessen tidal inflow to these residential areas as they connect directly to the marsh. We completed a bathymetry study of all our island ponds, which gives us a map of the bottom surfaces and allows us to compare to previous bathymetry studies and to note the change. This information allows us to plan upcoming drainage and spot dredging projects for the island. We did $2.36 million in road improvements last year, including the paving of 15 of Kiowa's residential roadways. Since 2022, we have brought 82 roadways up to the board's road standard of excellent or good. We spent money in trail improvements around the island, as well as the relocation of the V-Gate Leisure Trail further down Governor's Drive. Boardwalk improvements were done to boardwalks 9, 14, 15, and 16 on Eugenia, and 32 on Surf Song Road. We also added shower and rinse stations to our boardwalks, increasing those with water from 54% to 88%. We replaced the Inlet Cove bulkhead. We redecked the Falcon Point vehicular bridge. And we continued our major commitment to landscape improvements around our island ponds. We now have completed 67 of 122 ponds. So what should you expect from us in 2025 related to infrastructure projects? We are finishing Flood Project 6 drainage improvements. If you are on Yellowthroat Lane right now, you will see the last piece of the final project being completed. Yay! Yay! Our senior engineer's in the back. He's cheering louder than I am. We project having $455,000 remaining to be reserved for future island flood management priorities at the direction of the board. Continuing our commitment to drainage improvements with $1.2 million for repair of drainage lines and spot dredging. Repaving an additional $2 million in roads. We will be completely rebuilding the Cinder Creek dock and making repairs to the Retz Bluff docks. On our trails, we will be repaving numerous trails around the island, which are currently rated as fair, bringing them up to the board's required standard. We will be working on road and trail transitions along Green Dolphin Way. And we'll be again working on boardwalks. Our engineer would tell you that our boardwalks are temporary because he's constantly lifting and extending boardwalks where needed. We'll also be rebuilding the walk bridge between Ocean Green to Atlantic Beach. These are just a few of the items that we'll be completing for you this year. Of course, in addition to their regular work in 2024, our teams were also there to manage through tropical storms. Tropical Storm Debbie hit us in early August. In addition to the regular impacts of tropical weather, we had a tornado damage to deal with as well. As usual, our teams and our emergency contractors jumped right in to recover the island. While not in 2024, our most recent storm this year, Enzo, a snow and ice storm on Kiowa Island, simply unbelievable. Our Director of Land and Lakes was on island immediately and mobilized an emergency contractor to begin assisting us on the same day that the storm ended. Honestly, I could spend the rest of my career with Kiowa and not do a snow and ice storm again. Construction continues to be brisk on the island. Our livability team works to manage and oversee this activity. Today, we are at approximately 150 open new home construction permits on the island. While not as high as the last 2 years, it is still higher than we generally experienced 5 years ago. All of this activity keeps our security team really busy. Beginning with access control to the island, 2.37 million cars passed through the main gate in 2024. This was a 4% increase over last year and 11% increase over 2022. During the year, our security team issued over 61,000 passes and decals to commercial contractors and employees, up 5%. Plus an additional 91,000 to members, the member guests, renters, day visitors, special events, again, up 4%. Security continued their focus on enforcement. Our patrol team is engaged and out on the island. We had 3,318 enforcement actions in 2024 via verbal contacts, written warnings, and penalty citations. This is a 98% increase over the previous year. Our highest categories were parking, by far, followed by pass violations. We also had 121 contacts for working beyond commercial hours. We hope that the membership appreciates the efforts made by our security patrol team following your request for increased enforcement on the island. And of course, our Sandcastle staff. They love to welcome you to this facility. In 2024, they welcomed just under 78,000 people to this facility, 73% of who were members. The pools are our biggest draw, with 54% of the total check-ins. Over 17,000 people enjoyed the 1,384 fitness classes taught in this facility. 9,300 miles were put on our 4 treadmills. I know. And we added a Peloton to our equipment offerings. 94 KICA and private events were held last year. We brought your new events in a bourbon tasting and a karaoke night, as well as hosting our ongoing events like Celebrate Kiowa and the Oyster Roast. Over 500 people enjoyed Our World, our educational programming series. We welcomed a new caterer this past year to run the grill, and we found out that chicken tenders are the #1 menu item at the pool. Our communications team was busy throughout the year telling you all about KICA. Everything you need to know. They sent you 97 email communications with 50 weekly newsletters, every week but Thanksgiving and Christmas. 431 Facebook posts, 40 Instagram posts, 38 YouTube videos, and we had 187,000 individual users of our website last year, which is up almost 30,000. Just have to share with y'all that everyone's favorite beach cam, which sits looking at the beach right there because it's positioned right up here. It had 109,000 views last year, which is up from last year of 99,000. I think y'all were looking at snow on the beach. I'm just guessing. Yeah. All right, started in 2024 and due to be completed in 2025 is a redesign of our website. We'll also be going out to all our members again this year for our satisfaction survey of the membership, which is conducted every 2 years. That'll be coming in the next couple months for you. Of course, as a service organization, our staff members are critical to our success. We have had some new faces join our leadership team, so I'd like to take a few moments just to introduce you to our department directors. Come all the way over here. So first in line is Jody Forrest, our Director of Operations, who joined us in November of 2024. Sarah Bond, our Director of HR. Amy Cook, Director of the Castle, of course, Queen of the Castle. Leah Burris, our Director of Communications. Ryan Elmers, our Interim Director of Engineering. Ed Monahan, our Director of Livability. Doug Walter, our Director of Land and Lakes. Dale Schoen, Director of Finance. And at the very end, our newest member, Adam Shubsta, our Director of Safety and Security, who joined us just a couple weeks ago. We all have the privilege of leading a talented and hardworking team of 109 full-time staff members. In 2025, we will continue to work to serve our membership by continuing to preserve and enhance all that is so special about this place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Shannon. Paul, would you like to take over?
Sure. I just want to make a couple of comments relative to the activities of the governance task force this year. And the main message that I wanted to make is that the work we did was really a classic community effort. We had an excellent team on the governance task force. We had a lot of help from staff, including Shannon, Ellen, Leah, major effort by staff. The board was very much engaged, and perhaps most importantly, we had a lot of active engagement, participation, suggestions from our community, which was invaluable. And of course, at the end of the day, and Shannon mentioned these numbers, for the amendments themselves, we had a very high bar for quorum, especially given the percentage of our community that is not full-time here. And we cleared that bar with a healthy margin. So congratulations to the community for that. The only other thing I would want to mention is that based on one of the amendments relating to the developer's appointment right, we will have a special election to replace that seat coming up here shortly. So please pay attention to that. And then finally, as promised, we have undertaken a review of our existing rules and regulations. That process is well underway. And again, it's been a community effort. We've gotten lots of good feedback. We've had a couple of workshops, a couple of different discussions at the board, and currently we're planning to present the revised draft of our rules and regulations at the board meeting in April. That is really what I wanted to say. Kevin?
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
David?
Yes. Good morning. Today is my last day as a KICA board member. After 6 years and 2 terms, I've held the positions of vice chair, secretary, worked with 16 different board members, including 5 chairs. I wish to thank the community for electing me to 2 terms. I speak to you today as someone who obviously has a good historical perspective of the working of the KICA board. This morning, I'll look back over these 6 years to the best of my recollection and provide my perspective on some specific past workings of the board and make a few recommendations going forward. My first attempt to run for the board came in 2015 when Chris Dahlstrom, Diana Mezenot, and I ran without going through the process of the then nominating committee. That year, there were 6 candidates. 3 went through the committee process, 3 did not. Not surprisingly, the 3 that went through the process were elected. In the 10 years prior to the 2015 KICA year, did not have true elections. In each of those years, all candidates went through the nominating committee and ran unopposed. Essentially, the new board members were handpicked by the incumbent board and nominating committee. In 2018, I ran again. The nominating committee was still in existence, so I decided to go through the process. Somehow, I got nominated and won a seat on the board. Fast forward. Since that time, the nominating committee has been eliminated and replaced by an outreach committee chartered to encourage people to run without any recommendation. This was a very good decision by the board and a big change. We now have true elections, more apparent and more open and apparent. I have served on the board with 5 chairs. Each chair has essentially said that he or she has only 1 vote and that their primary administrative roles are running meetings and communicating with the chief operating officer. However, all board members are elected by the community and should have equal authority. In my experience, certain chairs have assumed a more authoritative role accompanied by an almost guaranteed majority of board votes. In my tenure, votes of the board were either 7-0 or 4-3. Not surprisingly, I was almost one of the 3. Most votes on routine matters were unanimous. However, the more controversial votes were 4-3. The same 4 in the majority, the same 3 in the minority. Fast forward. Now that the developer seat has been eliminated, KICA will now have 7 community-elected board members, which is a beginning toward mitigating this imbalance. Not a complete solution to more equality among directors. This is still a work in progress. A classic example relating to the board chair's assumed power was in March of 2021 board retreat, where the existing board and newly elected board members would meet to introduce a new member and provide insight to board operations. At that time, the board was clearly a 4-3 board. The 4 continuing on the board were Jerry McGee, Dave Morley, Brad McIlvain, and myself. The newly elected members were Alex Fernandez and Beth Zampino. It was apparent that Alex would likely be inclined to favor the 3, but at that time it was Brad, Jerry, and myself. This would result in the chair losing a locked-in majority. The next meeting of the board was scheduled in April with the newly elected members seated. So the retreat, which was not a meeting, opened with a sitting board member making a motion to expand the board to 9 members and to appoint the third and fourth vote-getters to the board. The motion was seconded and a very intense discussion ensued. Of course, the vote was 4-3 after a very heated debate. It was obvious that the 4 had planned this well in advance of the retreat. This maneuver did not foster any camaraderie, transparency, and trust among the board. As you know, a lawsuit resulted, and the court summarily ruled from the bench that the board could not appoint members. Therefore, the 2 appointees were removed, and this put to rest that all future board members must now and forever be elected by the community. I'm happy to say that I voted with the minority on this issue. A few years ago, the then COO left KICA. The rumor mill was rampant with misinformation, mostly on IKEA. Accusations were flying that certain members of the board, of which I was one, created a hostile work environment that contributed to the departure of the COO. This very false narrative did nothing to bring the board together, just the opposite. The board, not unanimously, decided to hire a consultant to investigate to the extent, if at all, there was a hostile work environment. It was obvious that this investigation was aimed at a certain trio of board members. Believe me, it was not comfortable being on the board while this investigation was ongoing on. The final result of the investigation was that there was no hostile work environment and essentially exonerated the 3 targeted members of the board. This investigation cost KICA $156,000. Again, IKEA was abuzz with misinformation and excoriating the 3 members without knowing all of the facts. I received many slanderous personal emails, and I know the other 2 received worse. This is another example of overreach by the majority of the board and the chair, resulting in written dissents by the minority members of the board. These examples attest to the difficulty of being a board member when you're not part of the majority. When I was first on the board, there were, I believe, only two committees, Finance and Nominating Committee. Our then COO was openly opposed to task forces and committees. The board, working together, decided to charter some new committees and task forces. Board members Jerry McGee, Brad McIlvain, and I were tasked by the board to hold several online community engagement meetings. These were very well received and provided the board with a much-needed community input. Moving forward, more committees and task forces were developed by the board, i.e. amenities, Sandcastle Task Force, Safety and Enforcement, Governance, and the Joint ARB Task Force. I was chair of the Amenities Committee, co-chair of the Safety and Enforcement Committee, and a member of that Joint ARB Task Force. In my opinion, these committees were a huge success. Community members now have the opportunity to participate in the governance of KICA and offer a great deal of expertise while working with board members on these committees. I remember my first public board meeting. It was immediately after the annual meeting in 2019 in Bobcat Hall. In that meeting, there was a group of preserve members who were questioning the segment assessment in the preserve. I made a public statement. In my opinion, the segment assessment was appropriate, but that the preserve was entitled to a more complete and accurate accounting of how the assessment was calculated. After the public session, we went upstairs to my first executive session. To my shock and surprise, I was immediately berated by a board member for speaking up. I was told very harshly that the assessment was a done deal and I should have kept my mouth shut. What did I get myself into? Another board member said that new board members should not speak at a public meeting in the first year. What? I found that asking questions was not acceptable, especially for a rookie. In the subsequent 2 years, however, two new board members were elected who also began to ask questions, Brad McIlvain and Alex Fernandez. Notwithstanding anything you heard or read on IKEA, in my opinion, they were two of the most productive and engaged board members I worked with. Alex, Treasurer Alex, asked probing questions, took a much-needed deep dive into KICA's finances, and made many improvements to our financial practices, including but not limited to that annual payment of $75,000 to the ARB. Thankfully, that payment has ended. Brad led the initial governance committee that updated the KICA bylaws, which was a lot of work for Brad and the committee. Additionally, Brad and I questioned why the family pool could not be heated and why the upgrade to the main bike path would take over a year. We were told that there was no place to put the heat pumps and the cost would be prohibitive. Brad and I have degrees in mechanical engineering with more than a modicum of knowledge around heat pumps. We were asked by the board to look into heating the pool. We met with staff and found a simple solution. Now the heat pumps are attached to the pump room and the cost was very reasonable. We were also told that 300 trees would have to be removed to upgrade and widen the Elysia Trail from first flyway to second flyway, from the first gate to first flyway. And to get the ARB approval and perform the work would take at least a year. At the same meeting with staff, we asked about the leisure trails. We were informed that it could be done before the busy season, considering March 15th. It took only a few months and only 14 trees were removed. The next day, Brad and I received an email from the chair chastising us because we were not authorized to discuss the leisure trails with the staff at that meeting. What? Again, these successes were the direct result of simply asking questions. A constant issue that is brought up by the committee at large is the concern about transparency or lack thereof. In my early days on the board, executive sessions were held after the public meeting and will last sometimes for hours. There were no boundaries on topics in executive sessions that normally should be limited to litigation, federal litigation, personnel matters, or contract negotiations. In my 6 years on the board, I cannot recall any discussions that could not have been voiced in public sessions other than those specific limitations. Since then, executive sessions have moved to just before the public sessions and are more limited in focus. Following the executive sessions now, the board has, quote, informal board discussions, unquote. Translation, a meeting. Yes, I participate in these discussions to get my points across, but whatever we discuss should have been discussed in a public session. This is still a work in progress. The community has a right to see and hear every board member's position on all topics. This can only happen in public sessions. The other transparency issue is within the board itself. The prior expansion of the board and the appointment of 2 new members was clearly orchestrated in advance by those planning it. As well, there have been a few times over the years where it was abundantly clear to me that the majority had made certain decisions in advance without full board participation. Given these scenarios, I've been prominent for me during my 6 years. I have a few recommendations for the board and community to consider. 1, improve transparency with the community. That is, limit the scope of executive sessions to the appropriate categories only, with no informal board discussions about KICA matters, which is essentially a meeting in disguise. Although KICA is not bound by the open meeting laws, it should operate as if it were. 2, enhance transparency with the board and develop some type of rotation of the chair, possibly limiting the position to a 1-year term. 3, hold the staff more accountable to the board and community by providing monthly written updates regarding the status of both current and upcoming projects. 4, increase community involvement, especially encouraging greater attendance at public meetings. In closing, throughout my tenure on the KICA board, I have tried to be a voice of reason. A voice of reason refers to a person who provides a logical perspective in a situation, speaking with rationality. The KICA board has made some positive changes in my 6 years, although there was also some missteps. For the KICA board, every misstep and what we have learned from it should result in a higher functioning board to serve the community. I want to thank all the people who have supported me during this entire time and provided me the opportunity to serve the community. I hope you feel well I hope you feel that I served you well. Thank you again.
Amanda, your floor.
Thank you, Kevin. Good morning, all. While I am not stepping down today with Lisa and David, this is the last annual meeting I will participate in directly. So I appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts with you prior to my appointment ending in April. Please keep in mind that development on Kiowa Island has been guided by the company for nearly 50 years. Our Designing with Nature philosophy is more than just a title to our ARB standards and guidelines. It is an essential tenet that is imbued in every decision made by the varying partners of the company over these many years. I have had the privilege to be a part of the island's evolution for half of that time frame. And while changes to style and design preferences are always a given, the fundamental goal of balancing development with nature remains true to the original vision. With involvement on the board of directors, the company has supported KICA's mission by leading it from being fully developer-controlled to a community-led board even before the pending expiration of the single appointment right. The current practices of the board and staff are rooted in the original draft of the standard operating procedures that the company set forth to guide expectations towards a commitment to excellence. The community has chosen to cease the company's board representation, but in doing so, should be mindful of why the appointment exists. To bridge the past to the present by offering a historical perspective to discussions and decisions, as loss of continuity can result in poor outcomes that erode intent. The company trusts that KICA boards in future will continue to adhere to the intended vision, with the leadership of KICA staff, Shannon in particular. As director terms come and go, reliance on the good judgment and tenure of KICA staff will be critical to maintain consistency of brand and enhance value. With ARB transition also on the horizon, it will be more important than ever to guard against waning of value, both from an aesthetic and experience basis. The measure of the island's success will rest fully in the hands of the community. Most communities suffer a loss of value with transition away from developer control. We urge KICA to become the best practice model for transition by embracing strong, non-politicized property owner governance. Being good stewards beyond personal goals is imperative to achieve this. While serving in this role on behalf of the company came with inherent challenges, I respect the KICA staff's professionalism and the efforts of my fellow directors, some of whom I have worked closely with. I especially value the moral support from Beth and Lisa during my initial tenure and the agree to disagree governance discussions with Paul. I will continue to attend open board meetings to monitor KICA's progress, and I will also be available to provide insight on behalf of the company when sought. Wishing the best for the island's future. Thank you.
So, as we've talked about, today completes the service for David DeStefano and Lisa Mascolo. As the developer director, Amanda Mole has one more month of service on the KICA board. As these three depart the board, over 12 years of experience leaves. Together, they have served in a variety of positions for our board, with their work on the Amenities Task Force, the ARB Task Force, Board Outreach Committee, Finance Committee, Governance Task Force, Marsh Management, and Security Committee, in addition to all the other things they were involved in as board members. Board service is a big time commitment, and it often takes a lot of work to become familiar with the various topics which come before the board, as well as to work within our committee and task force structures. Each of them dedicated their time, brought their own passion and their own expertise to their service. We have a small token of appreciation for each of our outgoing directors, but first, please join me in thanking all of our outgoing directors.
Thank you, Shannon.
All right. All set? Okay, next we'll go to member comments. A few things since it's the annual meeting. Today, member comments will be received live and via Zoom. All comments are advisory in nature to the board. We will start with comments in the room first. If you have a comment to make in the room, please raise your hand and a mic will be brought to you since we're filming this. If you are joining via Zoom today, please raise your hand on Zoom. Ellen is handling all our participants in Zoom today, and we will call on you by name to make your comments and open up the mic. For the record, please state your name and Kiwa property address before making your remarks so that we may hear from as many members as possible today. Please try to keep your comments brief. Anyone want to go first? Alex?
Alex Fernandez, 418 Snow Egret. Dave, thank you for your comments, sir. Thank you for your service. Thank all of you for your service. I think I know what that takes. So I want to thank the board for one accomplishment, or one of their accomplishments this year, and that is the enclosure of the second gate. For many years, we've had our employees exposed to rain, heat, cold, squirrels, whatever it was, in a manner that I didn't believe it was to be asked of our employees. It only cost $40,000 and it took several years for it to accomplish. So I want to thank you for that getting accomplished this year, and ask Dale to release some of the assets like the umbrellas, the heating, the fans, and all that that we're not going to need anymore for that process. So I would ask in the future, please do not put this in the back burner when it relates to the well-being of our employees. I think working at that second gate, I know if I had to work that second gate, I would call out sick on many occasions, particularly because of some of the requirements that were needed. So thank you for getting that accomplishment this year. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room like to make a comment? Brad?
Brad McElvain, 146 Blue Heron Pond Road. I also want to thank Dave for his service and all the members that are going off. One thing that's come up this past year, and it's been repeated, and Tim, since you're here, I'm glad you are here as the representative of Rosen Haygood. there's been an increased use of the lawyers, saying, well, the lawyer has said X or Y. And then when we say, well, what does the lawyer actually say? We're told it's privileged, even though they've now divulged what the lawyer said. So the question is, as the board moves forward, and I hope Rosen Haygood, working with the board, will make this process more transparent. Lawyers shouldn't be, as a former lawyer, lawyers shouldn't be used as an excuse to do things. They should provide, obviously, advice. Their advice, to the extent it's disclosed, should be disclosed. The entire advice, not just what's the board wants to disclose. So as the board moves forward, I hope there's a more transparent use of lawyers. I wholly agree with the use of lawyers. I was a big proponent that KICA should have its own counsel and have that advice, but there needs to be more transparency in the use of that. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room? Laura?
Maura McIlvaine, 146 Blue Heron Pond Road. I have two very brief comments. Kevin, you went through 6 priorities for the coming year, and that means April to April or April to March, including transfer the spit, front gate issues, amenities, ARB, evaluation of the general covenants, and then increasing coordination with the town, conservancy, resort, and partners. I would encourage you to add at least a 7th, if not more. I'm looking at the survey results from 2023, which was actually discussed at the last board meeting earlier this week. And that tells you the areas that need improvement. And according to everyone who answered the survey and the more than 7,000 comments that were made at the end of the survey, the second area that needs improvement, according to the community members, board communication. 23% of the members who contacted the board felt ignored. Please put that on your priority list, please. The other thing I would just say, Kevin, is a statement was made that the finance group is constantly looking at current conditions in the budget process. The experience this year was actually the opposite. The experience this year was they did projections in August or September, and when I asked a question in November how we were doing in actuals against those projections, I was told they hadn't gone back and looked at it. So we were 10 weeks into completing the budget, and they hadn't gone back and checked how we were doing. So I would ask you to actually make sure the finance group is working with current conditions when they're doing the budget. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room? Anyone online? No, sir. I think that does it for the first half today. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so please don't move. Please stay seated as the board changes and you convene, and we're going to reconvene for the next meeting. I'm going to ask Phil and Tim to take their seats with the new board.
Don't let Tim sit in my seat.
Okay, we'll call the meeting following the annual meeting to order. We have one thing on the agenda today, which is the election of board officers. We will start with the position of chair. Are there any nominations for the chair seat?
I'll nominate Kevin Donald.
Do we have, no, are there any other nominations? Okay. If there's one nomination, do I have a motion for Kevin for the position of chair?
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Thank you. I appreciate your trust. Next, we will move to the position of vice chair. Let me start this over again. Do we have any nominations for the position of vice chair? I'll nominate Dwight. Are there any additional nominations? Okay. Do I have a motion for Dwight for the position of vice chair?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Do we have any discussion? Anyone? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Excuse me? I'm sorry, thought I missed a part. All right, next we will move to, I believe it's secretary is next. Are there any nominations for the position of secretary?
I nominate Sherry.
Okay, any additional nominations? All right, do I have a motion for Sherry for the position of secretary?
So moved.
Any second?
I second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstained? Okay, and our last position is treasurer. Is there a nomination for the position of treasurer?
I nominate Paul Hennessy.
Any other additional nominations? Okay, do I have a motion for Paul for the position of treasurer?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that wraps up those positions. Thank you, everyone. I think next we also have the opportunity for member comments in the room or online. Ellen, anyone online? No, sir. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I appreciate it.